Welcome to lesson 1 of the One Tao Kung Fu course. So, in this lesson, we're going to take you through your stance and guard, the positions that you hold when in a self-defense situation. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is an internal and an external component. But let's start with the external. I'll borrow my friend Austin here. We've been training partners for a long time. So, with our stance and guard, firstly, what we do is we face front on. As you can see, maybe if he faces maybe this way towards me, Austin would shape up directly towards me so that he faces me with all of his limbs, all of his weapons for attack. Meaning, in this position here, he can use both arms, his elbows, his kicks and his knees. He can use all of his weapons quickly and easily. So we face front on in our stance and guard, that being one of the reasons. Another reason is that traditionally, in combat sports, if he faces side on like a boxer, so he goes into a side on stance. Now, in the ring with like boxing or taekwondo or competitive martial arts, facing side on is an advantage because you're less of a target. You've less to hit, less to score points on. Now, the issue with this in street fighting or real combat is that it's easier to be blindsided, to come to the backside of a person. Meaning here at the blind side, you can hit them in the kidneys, you can hit the back of the spine or the back of the neck or the back of the head, which is quite vulnerable. Meaning, in the ring, you can't do that because it's illegal. But in the street, you can do whatever you want, Hitting to the back of their head here can actually kill a person. It's called a rabbit punch. Named after when you have a rabbit and you hit the back of its neck, you break its neck and it dies. So there are a couple of the reasons why we face front on. So it's not so easy to be blindsided, and also you can use all your weapons at once. Now, in regards to the guard, maybe I get you facing from there. We keep our guard on our center line, which is this imaginary line down the center of our body, so that we can easily defend our eyes, nose, mouth, throat, solar plexus, and groin. So the hands stay here on our center, which means Austin covers, if you turn towards me for a second, if I come to attack him down his center, naturally he's already covering his center line, stopping me from taking the shortest distance to attack him, forcing me to take a longer distance, which he can easier cover, or even just strike me before I get there. Now, another important point on the stance and guard is that you want to be sure that this hand is slightly above the elbow. For if I trap this arm, he still has this one to defend. Now, if it's below and I trap it, then I've gotten 2 for the price of 1, which is advantageous to me. So you want to make sure this hand is slightly above. Now, you aim this approximately around the throat and chin area. So if I was, a small child or a giant, you can't really be a giant with you, but yeah, you want to try aim it around this area so that you can cover the whole upper body. So that's the external shape of the upper body. Now, with the actual legs, we slightly, ever so slightly. Some lineages point them right inward in order to protect their groin, but that creates a lot of tension in the hips and knees and even the calves and feet. And we don't want any tension in our system because it's an internal system. We want to be able to have a good flow of energy or qi through our body. So it's a slightly inward pointing from the knees and toes so that you have the whole body mass aimed towards the apex of like a pyramid or a triangular prism, like a Toblerone on its side. Do you like Toblerones? I hope so. Anyway, and this is the back of the Toblerone, the back of the pyramid, and this is the apex, so that we point everything in so we get this natural tendency for everything to want to go up the center. So if Austin is to kick with this position, it comes straight up my center, protecting his center and attacking mine simultaneously. So this is the external stance and guard, the external shapes. Now, in our system, we use either the front on guard with the fingers pointing straight through, or we can also use a double palm guard, which is a bit less aggressive. It's a bit better to use this in a self-defense situation in the public because you look less aggressive than an opponent if they're doing something like this. Okay, so that's the external parts of the stance and guard. Now, to go into the internals, I'll just give you one part of the internal, and that's what we call centering. Now, centering is about bringing your awareness into the center of your body so you can use your center of mass and your spine as the source of power. Now, in order to do this, maybe I'll borrow you facing side on now. Actually, we'll come back to the beginning part of it. There's a thing called Tae Gong, which means lift anus. Also in Pilates and yoga, they call it the pelvic floor, and that's engaging the base of the spine. Now, you do this by softly drawing out from the anus. Now, This has many benefits. One is that it unites the body mass, making you, let's say, heavier, well not heavier actually, harder to lift and more united as a mass. So I'll get Austin to come actually behind me, if you put your guard down for a sec, and slowly, just to demonstrate that here, and slowly go to lift me up like this without it. Yeah. So Austin's gonna come around and lift me up, so without using Tae Gong. Fuck, you're heavy. Okay, and just slowly, without Tae Gong, yeah. It's quite easy for him to lift. So now, I'll set myself up, softly drop Tae Gong and center myself. Now he's gonna do the same thing, go to slowly lift me up again. What'd you feel?
Much heavier the second time.
Yeah. Now, the thing is that I'm not actually heavier, I'm just harder to lift, meaning what's happened is the bottom half and the top half are being glued together. By drawing up from Tae Gong, it's like you have a sack of potatoes. You grab the sack and you lift it up, and the first half you get, and then the second half. So it was easier. But if you glue all the potatoes together by lifting from Tae Gong, it's harder to lift, meaning if Austin activates Tae Gong, so he draws up softly, and feels his center from here down to here, when he hits me, he's hitting me with a united mass. Or if he's blocking with a united mass. So automatically just activating that small lift from the anus is going to empower your self-defense skill. Little secret skill there, hey? So you want to get better at fighting, lift your anus. Very good. Now, the second part of that internal part of our Kung Fu system is that Tae Gong, that lifting, acts as a switch. Meaning, as soon as you lift that, you want to be feeling from the crown of the head down to the floor, so you want to try to feel that whole line. Like the lightsaber of Darth Maul, if you've seen Star Wars. You know, the guy's got the one in the middle and the two red go out the side. Don't use red, use a white visualization or a sky blue. We find that works the best to calm down your center and connect you to it. So as soon as Austin activates Tae Gong, he sees a line of white light or sky blue light to the top of the head and down to the foot, connecting him to his center. So as he keeps that on, making his body quite strong structurally. So I can put a lot of pressure into his body and he can take it. Whereas if he turns it off and he looks over there and thinks about chicken and women or something like that, then it's quite easy to break his structure. Same principle is if he activates Tae Gong and keeps his arm up in a defensive movement, then as I put pressure on him, that pressure can go into his spine quite easily and take a lot of force. Whereas if he takes that off and once again do the chicken and women thing and I just put a little bit of force in, it's quite easy to distract his structure. So, centering is the concept of feeling one's center from the crown down to the floor by activating it through a soft lift of the anus, Tae Gong. Now, what this does not only from a martial level but from a more mental, emotional and even spiritual level is that it starts to connect your physical, emotional, and mental centers or chakras by gaining an awareness and an alignment of them. Now, it's really just a feeling of the whole center because as you start to feel it, different movements in your body, things will start to release and energy will move naturally in it the way it's supposed to flow. So we'll go into that later. So that's the basic stance and guard. Toes pointed in softly, knees softly bent, hand and guard on the center, and softly lifting Tae Gong and feeling from the spot between your feet to the crown of your head. Okay, if you have any questions, post them below or email them to us, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.